Salam, Sanvanani, Molweni, Namaste, Vanakim, and welcome to this episode of The People's Voice, produced and presented by host Shabnam, Palesa, Mohamed for Salaamedia, broadcasting live from Tegwini, Durban, KZN, South Africa. Welcome to the show. Before I introduce our guest tonight, please tune into and share this conversation via Salaamedia's Facebook as well as the YouTube account. The topic we are talking about is parental alienation, which is, of course, a severe form of abuse and domestic violence. And before I introduce our guest, I'm going to look for the live video, and I encourage you to do the same. Find the live video and share this conversation on your profiles, on your groups, and on other pages so people have access to this conversation on parental alienation and on child alienation, more importantly. All right, we've shared the video, and I want to introduce into studio two of our guests for this particular conversation on alienation and the World Parental Alienation Conference South Africa, and they are Mondlane and Carmen Mocke. Mondlane is an alienated father of two children. He's also a children's rights activist, and he's going to give us an update on his case and his views on the socio-justice system in South Africa. Carmen Mocke is an adult survivor of alienation. She's also an activist against alienation abuse. She'll talk to us about the WPAD Conference 2021 and the law reform needed for children's best interests. Let's welcome them both into studio so we can have this really important conversation. Of course, we welcome your comments and your questions on our live video with so many people affected by parental alienation in South Africa. Mondlane, welcome to the People's Voice.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you on. Sadiq, let's bring Carmen into studio as well. Carmen, if you could please activate your camera and your mic. All right, I'm not sure if Carmen can hear us. Sadiq, if you can please assist her, that would be great. Let's start with you then, Solomon. For people who don't know the painful story of alienation from your children, please share a summary with us as much as you're comfortable sharing in a minute.
Yeah, it has been a journey, Palesa. Thank you for hosting me on your show. It has been a really long, painful journey. It all began when the mother of my children passed on. And before that, I was supposed to take her to hospital, and the parents refused me to take her to hospital after a doctor said it's very urgent and she needed to see the doctor. She had an accident, car accident. Then, the doctor suggested that she needs to do scanning. Failure to do that, we may lose her. And when the parents took her in, I demanded that she sees the doctor, goes to hospital as the doctor's instructions in Middelburg, where we're staying. And the parents refused, and they said the church will heal her. So it began, and she passed on 2 weeks later. And immediately after she passed on, the grandparents of the children took them in as their own children. They refused me to come to the funeral. They refused me to see the children. They refused me even to send, if I send something for the children, they will send it back. So I saw that it was really, they were launching a battle against me. And to avoid me confronting them, I had to go to court. I relied on our justice system. But I can tell you, Palesa, today, I regret on relying on our justice system.
I absolutely understand that. Solomon, since you last joined us on the People's Voice, can you highlight what has happened? Has there been any progress? Has the needle for change moved in any way? Solomon, can you hear me? Solomon? All right, I think Solomon is having an audio issue there. Both our guests seem to be struggling with technical difficulties, but we're talking about parental alienation, which is what happens when partners or parents or married partners separate or divorce, and one of the partners and or the families decide to keep a child away from the other parent. Often what's involved is a form of parenting called hostile aggressive parenting. Often there's gender bias involved against fathers or mothers, particularly in the socio-psychological and legal systems. There are complaints of incompetence in these systems that people turn to. And of course, allegations of huge amounts of corruption in family law, the sum effect of which is children are caught in the center. They're kept away from their families, they experience depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, they act out violence as children, which is why you're seeing the bullying issues in schools. When they grow up, they often perpetuate gender-based violence. And of course, we keep asking this question about why gender-based violence is such a big problem in our country. One of the primary reasons is parental and child alienation, because the child is cut off from half of them by a malicious parent, enabled by the socio-psychological and legal system in our country and around the world. It is a global phenomenon. And of course, there is advocacy going on in South Africa and around the world for a number of years. While there seems to be progress in certain regards, ultimately we're still facing the same problem. It is a form of psychological abuse on the child, and it is a form of domestic violence on the alienated family member, whether it's the parent or it's the extended family. So Solomon and Carmen have both experienced parental child alienation for a number of years. And we're very proud as Salaamedia to announce that there's going to be a World Parental Alienation Day conference in our country in April this year. Solomon, can you hear me now?
I can. I don't know what went wrong.
All right. So Solomon, since you last joined us on People's Voice, can you highlight what happened? Has there been any progress in your matter?
There's been progress because remember that I approached the DSD in 2017 to investigate my case, and they refused. We could have prevented so many things if they had accepted my request in 2017, because I realized that CMR, an organization that was investigating my children's case, was actually biased. The history of CMR is a corrupt organization which is funded by the government. So I approached the DSD to look into the issue. Until such time, I had to go for a hunger strike.
Solomon, I'm going to ask you to put your camera off so that we're able to hear your audio.
The DSD took up this case. So they investigated this case, Palesa, and they found the facts. The things that I've been telling them about, actually, with the latest audio I have.
All right, we're struggling to hear Solomon there. I'm just sending him a message to put his camera off so that we can hear his audio. Sadiq, if you could please assist us with that. Solomon has got a tragic story to tell us of alienation. He even went on a hunger strike outside the DSD to have access to his children. And up to now, he's not having access to his children. He's managed to see his son only one step. Nanette has been turned against her father and her father's family, and it's a horrible situation. And Solomon has been on a number of media platforms in South Africa, from print to radio, of course, including Salaamedia, to television as well. And still, he has no access to his children. And there are allegations of corruption involved in family law, which many describe as a racket, where practitioners make money off extending the conflict between the two parties, which should in fact rather be referred to mediation. In my interviews with people like Judge Samba Pillay, Professor David McCoy-Mason, we agree that in children's matters and in family law, mediation is the way to go and not litigation. So Sadiq is going to try and get both Solomon and Carmen on. It's okay if we have their video cameras off, as long as we can have audio for this really important conversation with both Solomon and Carmen who are victims of parental alienation and who have not seen their children for a really, really long time. So I want you as the audience to put yourself in the mind of an alienated child thinking, where is my parent? Why does my parent not love me? Why are they not making the effort to be in my life? That's what they would think when they're being alienated, and of course being brainwashed by the party doing the alienating to say, your other parent doesn't love you, your other parent is not interested in you, your other parent is not making the effort, not caring about the impact on the mental health of this child. We have a mental health crisis in our country when it comes to our children. And we see it in their behavior. We see it in their performance at school, inability to focus. We see it in bullying issues that are happening. We see it in gender-based violence perpetrated against their classmates, relationship issues when they get married, and all of it at its root is parental alienation. It is a core and key crisis in our country that needs to be urgently addressed. Solomon, can you hear me now?
I can, but we just disabled the camera.
All right, that's fine. So you were telling us about any updates that have happened since the last time that you've been on the People's Voice.
Yes, there is actually progress because the DSD took on the case after they refused in 2017. Now, what happened is that they found every allegation that I've made since 2017 against the grandparents and the truth about myself and my children and alleged. They found that because the latest report was that the children, my little boy, was supposed to visit me. And when the social workers went there, they were threatened with death by the grandparents. Now you can imagine when they threaten the social, you can understand how dangerous the grandparents are. And also my daughter insulted the grandparents in front of the social workers. And my boy, my child, was hidden from the social workers. And he couldn't come to visit me for Christmas and to celebrate the birthday of the little sister here at home. So these are the facts, and we were waiting since December to January for the magistrate to decide on the violation of the court order. Surprisingly, on the 18th of January, the magistrate started playing games with the legal aid lawyers' help, and they want to restart investigating my children's case, ignoring the investigation which was done by the social workers from the DSD, which took 11 months to investigate. And the lawyer from illegal aid only wanted to do it in just 2 hours, in just one day. And he was going to convince the magistrate. And I've been questioning the social workers that they've been introducing many strangers to my children. And these children now are traumatized since 2017. Many strangers. The bad person they cannot take to the children is the father. But they've been 10 social workers seeing my children. They've been psychologists, therapists, and all these people seeing my children. What about the father? Am I the worst person in the world the children cannot be with? Imagine after we celebrated the birthday on the street with my children. And that was an awful thing that can happen to a child. And the magistrate, till today, 4 years later, she can't make a decision about my children. Why? Mm-hmm. This is corruption at its best. This is simple corruption because you can see the...
Absolutely, Solomon. Okay, Solomon has just disconnected there again. I'm not sure what's happening with his connectivity, but Sadiq will assist to get both Carmen and Solomon back. Hesna Ashton says it's so unfair because if it was a mother, there would have been more empathy towards her. Men are still viewed as just breadwinners instead of vital parts of children's upbringing. You know, we hear this narrative of deadbeat fathers in South Africa. And while there may be parents, both fathers and mothers, who are not fit parents and where there are issues involved, certainly this narrative about deadbeat dads is not correct when there are fathers who are trying to be in their children's lives but are being blocked by doing so by mothers who are perhaps bitter, by their extended families, and by the psychosocial justice system. which does not see fathers as equal parents and does not realize the importance of having fathers in children's lives. Tesna Aston says parents who do this should be arrested like they are overseas. The pain in this man's voice. Zaytun Mazia says this is a gross violation of children's rights. The poor father, I really sympathize with him. Solomon, can you hear me? Solomon?
I can hear you. Sorry for that. We are struggling with our network here.
I understand. Sunny Khan says, I am a father who's alienated from my children. My family is not allowing me to see my children, and they cancelled my papers to return to South Africa. Yes, Solomon, I can hear you. I'm just reading a comment from one of our audience members, Solomon. So my question for you is, I've seen the trauma that you're going through. There are times where I understand you feel like just giving up on this entire situation because of how it's affecting you and your new family. Where are you now emotionally? What are you planning to do? All right, it looks like Solomon can't hear us right now. But we know that he's very much affected by the situation, and a magistrate who can't make a decision, who can't refer to mediation, who can't see what's happening here with these two children, who have a right to their father. Their mother has passed on. The father is saying, I am here. I want to be a parent to my children. The grandparents are blocking that from happening, and the justice system is not helping. Mediation is what needs to happen. The damage to these children psychologically is immense. The daughter is already estranged and has been brainwashed by the little boy. Seth wants to spend time with his father, but is being prevented from doing so. So clearly we have a child alienation crisis in our country, in South Africa. The WHO does recognize, interestingly enough, child alienation. Sami Khan says, I've never seen my children for 2 years. Imagine what that does to the psyche of a child who's wondering, where is my father? Where is my parent? Why are they not trying to see me? And then grow up with these self-esteem and self-confidence issues and take that forward into their lives. So certainly a lot needs to happen. And perhaps we'll ask our audience members what they think. What needs to be done to prevent child alienation from happening or from continuing to happen? Do we need more education with children, with parents, with extended families, with the justice system? Do we need to make mediation compulsory, where instead of going to the court, you sit down and you work out your issues in the best interest of the children? Or do we need criminal sanctions, where if you are alienating a child or children, then you need to face criminal sanctions or a criminal sentence, whether that's imprisonment, whether that's community service? What needs to happen? How do we stop child alienation from happening in our country, given the impact that is clearly affecting our children as well as parents? One can clearly hear the trauma in Solomon's voice, fighting this battle for a number of years, having gone on hunger strike, thinking that might work, and it hasn't. Of course, not all situations are the same. We do hear of couples that are willing to co-parent, 50-50 co-parenting, which is the ideal situation. And of course, our economy is destroyed. 50% of South Africans are unemployed. So one cannot say, if you are not paying maintenance, I'm going to withhold access. That's not actually how it works in the law. Maintenance is a separate issue. It's not a pay for play where if you don't pay maintenance, I'm not going to allow access. Yes, deal with the maintenance issues, but do not alienate a child from their parent because it is a form of abuse. Karen Creel says, please acknowledge this is not just actions happening to fathers, but to mothers. Absolutely, Karim. Which is why we also have on our poster for the show today, Carmen Mocke, who is an alienated mother. Unfortunately, Carmen's not been able to connect to us. She's having some connectivity issues along with Solomon. Bernard Sitole on our YouTube feed says, putting the best interest of the children first is not implemented practically in South Africa if children don't have access to their father. Absolutely. What we're saying is that children must have equal access to both their parents. It does also simplify the maintenance issues. It avoids having to run to court and spend money that parents don't have litigating instead of looking after the children. Bernard Satole says, indeed, Karen, the same surely applies to mothers too. I'm sure that we can find a solution that can work both sides, even though in most cases, the fathers are in such situations compared to mothers. Yes, there's an enormous amount of gender bias involved in fathers. And while we acknowledge that mothers are also alienated, if one looks at the statistics, generally primary care is given to the mothers. And of course, then both parties are primed to go to court and then fight. I believe the situation is engineered in this way to create a ripe and fertile ground for endless litigation. Families end up spending hundreds of thousands, millions even, and those who simply cannot afford to litigate often end up giving up. Yet there are solutions. We need education about co-parenting and against parental alienation. We need mediation to be made mandatory in family law, particularly where access and maintenance are concerned. And where there are parents who are continuously alienating children, perhaps the only solution is a criminal sanction. Perhaps there needs to be a month or a week or whatever it is of jail time, because some parents just refuse to co-parent. Alternatively, they need to do community service. Alternatively, perhaps they need to pay a fine. But certainly this crisis cannot be allowed to continue. Do we have Solomon on a phone call now, Sarika? Solomon, can you hear me?
Yes, Paris, I can hear you.
All right, let's continue with this conversation. A couple of comments. Sami Khan says, my mother is not so well. Every day she asks me, when am I going to see or hug my grandchildren? Certainly, grandparents are horrifically affected by child alienation. They are one of the primary victims of alienation in this issue between parents who seem unable to co-parent for whatever reason, where grandparents are not allowed access to their grandchildren. And it's a traumatic situation for them to go through, to feel like they cannot see these grandchildren, they cannot speak to them on the telephone, they cannot have video conversations, they cannot see them in person, they cannot have stayovers. Grandparents are indeed stuck in between this crisis situation and traumatized as a result. Sadiq, let's try and reconnect Solomon on the telephone conversation. Sami Khan's Zaytun Mazia says mediation must always supersede litigation. The court must stop dragging their feet. Absolutely, reports upon reports upon reports, costing parents thousands and hundreds of thousands of rand. Sami Khan says, I tried to come back to South Africa. I didn't know that she's blocked me. So I booked 2 tickets and lost 24,000 rand. And I've now got liver cirrhosis. I'm a stage 4 patient. I mean, that is just horrific. Here's a father who's desperate to see his children. Solomon, can you hear me?
I can hear you good, Palesa.
Oh, all right. I couldn't see you on the second screen there, so I didn't know whether you're still with us. But of course, you've heard what it is that I've been talking about. Why do you believe that child alienation is such a crisis in South Africa, Solomon? What's going on?
You know, our court, Palesa, that's been turned into money schemes. There is a web of corruption existing in our children's courts. It's visible. It's there. You can see it. You can see it when the magistrate says something today and the following day she changes. Maybe she will say, I forgot what I said previously, or she will bring new players in the case to just manipulate, even when the evidence is there. For example, with my case, the evidence is there. The social workers, they were threatened with death from the grandparents' house. My daughter insulted the social workers. My daughter is speaking lies about me. She has been turned complete against me. It's not the child I brought up. So 4 years later, she's somebody else. She's standing between me and the younger brother who still wants to see me. And the social workers were shocked when they saw my daughter being aggressive in the manner that she was. Now, this is an evidence that which they are seeing today, which in 2017, I emphasized to the magistrate that now in 2017, you need to rescue my children because they will be influenced and be taught all bad things. Now, because of money going around, imagine supervised visits, they cost 600 rand per hour for a parent, 600 rand per hour. How many supervised visits are you going to do? Imagine seeing a psychologist. It's 9,900. Those are the quotations for 2017. Now, you need to pay a lawyer. at the end of the day, I've lost almost 120,000 rand in this case alone, with many things that I had to pay for all around this case. Now, there are parents, mainly fathers, who pay something like 500,000 to 2 million rand, and they're still fighting to see their own children. For goodness
Solomon,
sake.
it's clearly a racket. Solomon, it's clearly a racket. What do you think needs to happen to stop child alienation? Education, mediation, criminal sanctions, fines? What needs to happen?
The government, the political parties, and all the stakeholders, human rights association, public protector, police, lawyers, social workers, they need to engage all these people who are complaining about the Children's Court. Let us sit on a round table and discuss even our Children's Act, because there are loopholes on the Children's Act. If you read it, you can see that it's sexist. It favors mothers. It favors grandparents from the maternal side. The fathers in majority. They're supposed to be paying lots and lots of money. It's all about mothers and grandmothers on the maternal side. Yes, there are mothers who are also facing parental alienation, but in majority are fathers. So we need to engage and sit down with mediators and all these people and discuss. It shouldn't be as difficult as 4 years and somebody has to pay more than 10,000 rand to see his or her own children. It should be easy.
Absolutely. Solomon, I'm going to ask you to pause there because Carmen has just joined the conversation. Carmen, thank you for joining us on the People's Voice.
Thank you so much, Shabnam. My heart goes out to every parent out there who doesn't have access to their child.
Okay, I'm having very difficulty in hearing you, Carmen. You may have to switch your camera off and just use audio. The network is not very clear there. All right, let's take a couple of, I can hear you now. Let's take a couple of comments here from our audience. Fesna Aston said, criminal sanctions if compulsory mediation doesn't work. No parent owns the child. This deadbeat dad and mother is the best choice, needs to stop. Urgent education also about their rights. Zaytun Mazia, one cannot give a blanket ruling. Each situation must be treated on a case-by-case basis. Social workers are far more qualified to make a determination in such cases. I don't know about that one, Zaytun. There are plenty of complaints about social workers as well. It is heartbreaking. Castro Musiali, who is another alienated father, said, I'm glad Solomon speaks bluntly about the existence of corruption in the system. I do not believe that people are incompetent. If they were incompetent, superiors would have noticed and intervened. The system is vulnerable to money exchange. Sami Khan, I tried to call my children for their birthday, but they cut the call. They even changed the phone number. Carmen, you are an alienated mom. You're also an adult survivor of alienation. For those who don't know the painful story of alienation from your children, please share a summary for us, as comfortable as you are sharing, in about a minute.
Thanks, Shabnam, and my apologies for being late. Alienation is against the good morals.
All right, we're struggling to hear Carmen. Sadiq, can you please get Carmen on a telephone call as well, please? I'll continue with Solomon. Meanwhile, Solomon, if you can hear me, how are you feeling now? Because I know there are times where you feel like you need to give up, but you haven't given up thus far. You're one of the most inspiring dads out there who is campaigning for the right to be a father and for these children to have a right to their father. Where are you now emotionally, and what are your plans?
Palesa, I haven't given up. My doors are open for my children. I'm just worried concerning my elder daughter. I'm worried about Nanette. Sorry for mentioning her name. I just forgot. But I'm worried about her, that she's become somebody else. And my worry is that by the time people are saying when she's of age, she will come, which attitude will she bring in my house? I'm scared because I need to bring up my children according to my own rules. If now she can insult social workers, she can insult the father, she can stand between me and my son, it's a problem. Now, I voice to the magistrate to say, for now, rescue now my son, because he's willing to come. He still recognize me as the father, even though he was told that I'm a stepfather. So I'm saying rescue him first now and take the girl to the therapist. She should be turning 13 now, but of age. What type of a person will be that person? Because she's now accusing, even false accusing, the father at this age. What will happen in future when she meets somebody, a man out there? Will she live a life of lies in her life? I'm worried because I don't teach my children that.
Of course, of course. I mean, your daughter certainly is also a victim of severe psychological abuse, brainwashing, and manipulation. Because, I mean, the mere fact that she's behaving in that way is evidence that alienation is happening. That's it. Any presiding officer who needs to understand where is the evidence, look at the behavior of a child. If a child is rejecting that parent, that loving and fit parent, there's the evidence right there that alienation has happened. So what the presiding officer needs to do is to order reunification therapy at no cost, not at a cost to the parent who is alienated. If there is any cost involved, then the alienating parent or party needs to be responsible for paying the cost of reunification therapy to fix the relationship between the child or children and the parent they've been alienated from. Zaytun Mazia says, don't give up, Solomon. Clearly, your children are traumatized and they will need counseling when you're eventually able to reunite with them. Solomon, in your view, what is the impact of this abuse on alienated children, on parents, on families? What's going on? Because you are an activist in this area. What is the impact?
You know, children, they suffer in silence. They suffer. They want to voice out, but they're intimidated by the alienators. The people, imagine in 2017 when I was still having those few phone calls with my daughter, I still have the recordings with me on my laptop. She was so scared and there were voices telling her what to say to me. So they suffer in silence. And the social workers have been telling them that I even have the audios of my daughter and you can easily hear that she's scared wherever. So they suffer. They want to speak out. Like my son now wants the father. He had to fight and tell the social worker that on my birthday, I need my father. And the 3 engagements I had with my son, the social workers were very happy. And they actually told me, Solomon will be taking your child back to you because we can see your relationship is clear. The only person we need to deal with is your daughter, who is going through so much. You can see that he has been poisoned. Also,
Solomon, I'm going to take a comment here from Fesna Aston. And she says, love her and forgive her, Solomon, when she does come to you. It's not her fault. She's lost, angry, and hurt. We want to talk to Carmen now. Solomon, if you can please hold the line. We've got quite a bit of catch up to do with Carmen, but she's joining us telephonically. Carmen, for those who don't know the painful story of alienation from your children, please can you share a brief summary with us, as much as you're comfortable sharing?
Thank you, Shabnam. Let me tell you, parental alienation is against the good morals of society. It's a method whereby a party, often during divorce proceedings, does everything they can to break the instinctive bond between a loving parent and their child. This can be done by abusing the court processes and mentally poisoning the child against a loving parent. I have experience in parental alienation. I've got experience both as a child from my father, and I've got experience as a mother from my children. It's very painful indeed.
Absolutely agree with you. Carmen, can you share with us, since the last time you were on the People's Voice, what happened since? Has there been any progress in your matter, any contact with your children?
Remember, in litigation, when you are dealing with certain personality types, mediation does not work. And then you are relying on the court to make a judgment at their best discretion. The only progress I've made is that I have a suggestion from the Office of the Family Advocate for 50-50 parental rights. This still means nothing because it's not a court order. If you are dealing with an adversarial person who wants to eliminate you as a parent, you need to get the Family Advocate's report as a court order because they will still do as they please with the children. Then also I've got a court date to finalize my matter in November this year. So for 9 years, my children have been influenced and kept away from me. And this has been ongoing. The estimate cost at the moment is 1.2 million rand. You know, it's disgusting how we are raped of our finances as kind and loving parents just because we want to be in our children's lives. This must stop.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with you. And of course, there is Section 35 in the Children's Act, which can be enforced against a party in contempt of a court order, which includes, a prison time, which includes fines and sanctions, and which should include other options like community service that, we previously put forward to the relevant stakeholders. But it's not happening. Section 35 is not enforced. The alienation continues, the suffering of children continues, the suffering of parents and extended families continues. A couple of comments here. Let's see. Castro Musiniali says we must campaign for these applications to be finalized within 90 days at least. This conduct by the system to prolong the suffering of children, as is happening with Solomon's daughter, must end. Sami Khan says, the last time I spoke to my daughter, she says, Daddy, where were you? When are you coming back? She was crying. They are so close to me. Amy Makan says, remember the friend I mentioned whose ex accused him of abusing a child last year? The teddy bear clinic cleared him after a lengthy investigation, and she has again laid new false charges, all to alienate him from his son.
Yes.
Certainly, where there are false allegations involved, then, there needs to be criminal charges as well as civil action as well for criminal injury and defamation. Cornay Kruger says, I help many fathers in their battles. The biased social workers, family advocates, and courts are literally destroying fatherhood in this country. It's very rare to find a lawyer or an advocate not agreeing with me, yet nothing is being done. Years ago, women had less rights than men. It was believed that women could not fulfill the roles. This has changed. Why is it not true with fatherhood in this country? Why can I, as a single father, look after my young children perfectly well? When I speak about it, I'm being told this cannot be done. Sami Khan, I send emails to Home Affairs, but no reply. Carmen, I've got a question for you. Alienation is also a form of domestic violence. Bottom line, it's abuse and it's domestic violence. Whether the system recognizes it or not is a topic we will be addressing at the World Parental Alienation Day conference, the first ever in South Africa. What is the impact of alienation on adult survivors specifically, because you are an adult survivor, and on society in general?
So successful parental alienation is the sadistic act of removing 50% of a child's support system or family. And I would always say the controlling parent is the one that has a vile, vicious, and fictitious process, and they remove the loving parent with their own delusion that they have of that parent. Remember, your marriage has now fallen apart, and now you've got to some story to make yourself look like a savior. What they do is they leave these children with a very low self-esteem. And I quote my family advocate report. The children end up having a low self-esteem. Also, by my experience, they have feelings of guilt. Because you feel guilty. Your parents have not made it. Maybe it's your fault. The children do introspectively feel guilty. They have feelings of inadequacy. They have shame. And they have hatred. The alienating parent encourages hatred towards the other parent, and that child learns hatred to other people. And of course, they always have this fear now because they've only got one parent and they don't know any better. They don't know that there is love out there, unconditional love. And often the alienating parent has a relationship with them based on a conditional love. If you love me, you will not speak to your mom. If you love me, you will not go with your friends. If you love me, you will do as I tell you. It is a conditional love. It is a desire for possessive control. That is not a kind and loving father or mother that keeps your child away from you. That is someone that
it's essentially keeping a child as a hostage. Customers and there's another story of neglect of children by the government that is lauded for having the best constitution. It's posted a YouTube link there. Riaz A. Ismail says 50-50 custody should be the norm. Children shouldn't have to choose, and loving parents shouldn't have to be fortunate to be a part of their children's lives. Carmen, what do you think needs to be done to prevent child alienation from happening? And if it is happening, from continuing? Education, mediation, criminal sanctions, what needs to happen?
Right, so let me tell you, this is a system with processes that have managed to run well for many, many years. And It is a biased system and $1 billion industry. So you are not going to be very popular with law firms, and you are not going to be very popular with the family advocates, and you're definitely not going to be very popular with social workers if you're telling me today you don't believe in what's happening now in South Africa's court system, because that's how they get their salary. The longer the process takes, the more fees the lawyer can write up against the estate. The longer the process takes, the more consultations the social worker will get. Many of these people are not there to sort out the best interests of the child. Many of the people that are involved as professionals want the case to drag as long as possible so that they can make money writing ridiculous reports and not finalizing the matter. What can be done? Shabnam, we need law reform. We need to present to Parliament. Parliament must give us an opportunity to present a proper plan. If you can rescue a company, if you can publish a business rescue plan in 90 days, why can't we have one practitioner responsible for a family instead of two lawyers raping the family estate of its funds, stealing from the children of South Africa? Now, on that note, South Africa is the strongest country in terms of rights, in terms of interesting case law and equality. But it is not a country that regulates divorce in a humane manner. The attorneys, the social workers, and the family advocates couldn't be bothered to finalize your matter in a couple of days or weeks because they are salary earners. If they are paid by their performance, we might get better results. Now, them, and I would actually say many of them, you know who you are, prolong the process to earn money from this process to the detriment of the children. And you know what? The parents are talking. We as parents, the world is only so big, and we know who you are. You are making a reputation for yourself. If you want money, please go and start another business. Go and be a Richard Branson and start an airline. Leave our damn children alone. Leave our kids alone.
You can hear Carmen Mocke very passionate about the subject. She was alienated from her father and she is now alienated from her children. Before we talk about the World Parental Alienation Conference, which is coming up in April, Carmen, I want to ask you how you're doing emotionally. Same question that I asked Solomon. How are you doing emotionally? Do you ever feel like giving up? What is your plan?
At times.
Because I was removed from my father and I went through all those feelings and I had so many battles as a young teenager alone without a dad. Because I had so many battles as a young mom in a very difficult relationship in my first marriage. I can tell you, to all the parents out there, if you are being removed from your children now while they are young, do not go away. Do not give up. Your child needs you. Because when they are in the same position that you are right now, they have no parents to give them guidance. And they are just going to become another victim to South Africa's ridiculous family laws here. You need to show up as a parent. Yes, they're going to hate you. Yes, their parent is going to give them some delusional story why you don't love them or why you're not in their family anymore. But listen to me. They are not stupid. I started to see the conditional love from our own mother when I was a young adult. I saw her ridiculous behavior at times and her strange demand for a conditional love. Your children are going to wake up and they are going to also see through the alienating parent. And a sad statistic is, if the alienating parent can walk away from someone that they promised they everything to, that they made an oath in a church and said they will love for better or for worse, and they can be so evil to use such ugly tactics to manipulate the mind of a child. When your child starts to realize this in that person, it's very easy for that alienating parent to walk away out of their life just as much because they have a love-based relationship, and your child will have no support system and be alone in this evil world where you've got all sorts of people standing in different systems just waiting to take advantage of them. We need to protect our children. We need to educate our children. And most of all, we need to expose these people that are taking advantage of families in disputes. Mediators,
Absolutely.
they are fantastic. I personally have mediated at the children's court. I have mediated people older than me that have been in emotional heights because of their decision making and their emotions. And I can tell you, I believe firmly in mediation. It saves money. It's quick. It's easy. But you cannot mediate with people with borderline personality disorder. You cannot mediate with a sociopath. You cannot mediate with a psychopath. You cannot mediate.
Certainly, the law has changed now to say mediation must be attempted before litigation. Certainly, a party that refuses mediation raises all sorts of questions. If the matter does go to court, the presiding officer's got to ask themselves, why has this party refused mediation? Why do they want to litigate? It's traumatic for the children involved, for both parties. It's costly and it's unnecessary. So we want to take a couple of questions here and comments. Rooney Macken says we need to push the court to force the alienator to undergo psychological evaluation, because in most cases, this toxic narcissistic behavior is detrimental to the child's mental health. Absolutely agree with you, Rooney. An alienator should undergo psychological evaluation. Anthony M. Stevens says, it's sad and it borders on tragic to see children growing up alienated from their parents. Their self-confidence becomes damaged and the ability to be high-value contributors to society are diminished. The government must come to realize this, as the cost to resolve the issues earlier are far less costly than wanting when children become teenagers. Children should not be bargaining tools or profit centers for social workers and other parties. Rooney Macken also says the court needs to be harsher on the alienator because the behavior always repeats itself. Sami Khan, I cry every night when I look at my children's picture. That's the only thing that I have of them. Sami Khan, our hearts go out to you. And of course, to all activists who've been advocating for healthy co-parenting in our country. I want to talk about the World Parental Alienation Conference in detail now. Of course, on the 25th of April around the world is World Parental Alienation Day. For the first time this year, South Africa is going to be hosting the World Parental Alienation Day. It's going to be hosted by the South African Coalition for Child Access Rights, which is hosting the first World Parental Alienation Day conference from the 23rd to the 25th of April. Of course, it's going to be a virtual event hosted by platforms such as Zoom, and it's a 3-day program which includes all sectors of society. And both Carmen and Solomon are involved in the South African Coalition for Child Access Rights and are going to be coordinators and speakers of the World Parental Alienation Day conference at the end of April. Carmen, can you tell us some of the aims or the highlights of this program? And after that, how people can get involved to get more information, to sponsor the cost of this conference?
So first and foremost, people, it's really hard to be part of a group of society that is burning money. If you are cutting this litigation process and you have to pay to see your child under supervision or whatever, which the courts love to do because then it's just more money for the system, right? Please, I know you don't have a lot of money because it's a very expensive process, but if you can give 50 Rand or something, we really want to make a difference and we want to take this up to the legislators. Clearly, the court thinks that they are higher than the rest of society and they forget that we have a constitution. We need to bring this to the lawmakers. The legislators must hear us tonight. We are not going to go away. If you have anything that you think can make a difference, I want you to send me an email. I want to know what is your solution, because it is very clear that there are professionals abusing civil society when we need them the most. So guys, please, if you want to get involved, if your divorce case is taking too long, if your divorce case has gone through, listen to me carefully now. If your divorce case has gone through and the children and the estate have not been dealt with, that is corruption. By definition, a divorce is supposed to finalize the children and it's supposed to finalize the estate. You can complain against that.
All right.
So bring us
Carmen, let's take a comment here. Let's take a comment here from Craig. When a person raises an affidavit in a divorce case, why is it not accompanied by a polygraph test? This will prevent false declarations, otherwise known as lies. Very important point. Polygraph test can actually be used. So the South African Coalition for Child Access Rights is hosting a 3-day conference from the 23rd to the 25th of April. The 25th, of course, is the official World Parental Alienation Day globally. This is the first Parental Alienation Day conference hosted by South Africa by SACA. And it's a 3-day program, as I mentioned, where you will hear children and adult survivors of parental alienation speak. You will hear families speak about their experiences. You will hear from South African organizations that have been campaigning for co-parenting and against child alienation. Sadek, please hold that comment there for me on YouTube. You will also hear from psychologists, social workers, members of the legal profession, journalists who write about this particular issue, Chapter 9 institutions, NGOs who work in this area, as well as international speakers. The conference will also include representatives from the Presidency, the Department of Justice, Department of Social Development, and of course the responsible Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. So it's a very important conference. And of course, if you want to get involved, if you want for information, if you want to sponsor this critical conference to improve the social fabric in our country, and of course the mental health of children and adults who are trauma victims of alienation, you can email sacar2021@gmail.com. So can you please bring up those comments from YouTube again? It's flown past before I can actually read them, but we want to, of course, acknowledge this comment. I think there was a comment by Clive Pillay talking about his experience of child alienation. Zaytun Mazia says, well done, Carmen and Solomon. Continue to conscientize society as most of us are ignorant on the subject matter. Looking forward to the virtual conference. Thank you, Zaytun. Sami Khan, I beg everyone, just help me to talk to my children. But they said your ex told everyone that anyone who talks to me is going to be arrested. Even I found a lady who said, I can help you to get confirmation letter to come to South Africa. I paid that lady 4,600 rand. The lady took the money and ran away. Sami Khan, certainly a very tragic story involved there. Sami, if you can please email sacar2021@gmail.com. We would love to involve you in the South Africa's first World Parental Alienation Day conference at the end of April. Now, Solomon, you're also going to be one of the speakers at this WPAD conference. What will be your message? Whether that's to government, Department of Justice, social development, alienators, their enablers. What's your core message going to be, Solomon?
If we want to win the war against GBV, crime, prostitution, and drug abuse, let us attend to this pandemic. Parental alienation is real. It's a pandemic. It's destroying families. Let them come on board. Let them not ignore us. We are fathers. We are mothers. We are parents. Children are born by two people. If there is a third person, it's a bonus for the kids because children must have access to every structure in the family. But the first two people are the mother and the fathers equally. So they must not ignore us. Let them come on the table. Let's discuss this and look at the Children's Act in details because there are loopholes which lawyers, social workers, and all other people engaged, they are manipulating to make money out of it. It's real. Imagine in my case, there are 6 reports. The magistrate is sitting on 6 reports, but even today she can't make a decision. Why? She's covering the mess she's created with the legal aid lawyers and with this multi-million rand organization which they developed, the DSD does not want to investigate. CMR has damaged families. There are many children who are victimized by CMR, abused by CMR, and they want to talk. The government must now start opening up, and these children must come out. Some now are adults who want to talk of their experience under CMR. How can they fund an organization, a former apartheid organization in our time, to continue abusing our children? So we need to engage and to talk. And
very important point there, Solomon. And we're going to hear more of Solomon's story and his message to government, alienators and their enablers at South Africa's first World Parental Alienation Day conference at the end of April, hosted by SACA, South African Coalition for Child Access Rights. Carmen, I would imagine some of the outcomes of this conference would have to be that child parental alienation is recognized as a form of severe psychological abuse. It is recognized as a severe form of domestic violence, and that co-parenting and mediation become mandatory. Would I be correct in saying that these will be some of the outcomes of this conference?
So yes, Shabnam, and another thing I just want you to realize as well is those professionals out there that intentionally delay the process, that intentionally use our children as pawns to line their pockets for their holiday homes and things. You must know that we are watching you, and the legislators are watching you. We will rewrite the laws, and we will take away your rights and your jurisdiction to rob us families. This is a culture of inclusion. This is a culture of Ubuntu. This is not the old apartheid ways that were here. We are changing the ways of the law in South Africa. If Mandela can get right, all these parents that are paying to see their kids also have a voice. So you listen to me now today. Your time of stealing and robbing us is coming to an end. We will present to Parliament. Parliament will take into consideration our most precious resource in South Africa is children. And it is not your privilege to steal from the family unit, especially not in our strong country, South Africa.
All right, last question for both Carmen and Solomon. Solomon, what's your message to your children, but also to all victims of parental alienation?
I love you, my children, all equally. All of you, I love you. Daddy's alive. I'm not an absent father. I'm not a sperm donor. I'm not a sperm donor. I'm not in the business of donating sperm. My kids are my responsibility. You are my responsibility. I'm here within reach, not far from where you are. I'm alive.
All right. We're going to have to leave the conversation there. My apologies. Because of all the technical difficulties, we've run out of time. Riaz Ismail, if 50-50 custody becomes mandatory, I can bet you there will be less divorces as well. I want to say thank you to both our guests, Solomon Mondlane and Carmen Mocke, for joining us today on The People's Voice. We're looking forward to the WPAD conference at the end of April. Thank you to all of our guests today, Felicity Menge, Fahri Hassan, Carmen Mocke, and Solomon Mondlane, our listeners, our viewers, and the Salaamedia team. Please remember to share this show and ask yourself every day, what are we doing to make our world a better place? Until the next episode of The People's Voice, Revolutionary Peace. Assalamu alaikum.